This is Motivation. I'm Lori Joy Kingwell.
And I'm Chrissy Van. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode.
Some people enter your life like a spark, unexpected, magnetic, and they arrive just when you didn't know you needed them. And suddenly, your world shifts. They challenge you, ground you, crack you open. And for a time, you're riding the same road, sharing stories, laughter, silence, and survival. It's not always easy, but it's real. Now, over the past 5 or 6 years, a group of us, each from completely different walks of life, somehow found each other through motorcycles. What started as weekend rides turned into something far deeper. We built a kind of chosen family, one forged in vulnerability, grit, ridiculous laughter in abundance, and unconditional support. Now, we've navigated everything life throws you at midlife: divorce, illness, the ache of dreams deferred, the joy of new beginnings, big career pivots, and gut-wrenching losses. And through all of it, we grew, not just as individuals, but as a collective that somehow just clicked. But something has been stirring, a quiet shift, like we're all on the brink of something new. Maybe we were meant to come together not to stay the same, but to wake something up in each other. And now that something's calling us forward in different directions. So what do you do when the people who helped you become who you are start evolving into someone new too? Can you hold on to what was while still making space for what's next? That is what we're talking about today. Because maybe you felt it too, that tug in your gut, that knowing, that moment when the road starts to curve, and you have to decide whether to grip the handlebars tighter or lean into the turn. This is the Motivation.
So in this lifetime, when you can find people that you really click with or really get you, or they're your safe spaces, it's a beautiful thing. There's nothing like it. And you and I, Chrissy, have both been fortunate enough that we've had some extraordinarily beautiful friendships throughout our life. We're still really connected to many of them across the world, back home, all those different things. But there was something very extraordinary, is like the only word that really feels like it comes close to what we came across when we found this community, this core group that we have been rocking with for, which is wild to think, but just over half a decade now. And
I'm sorry, I'm misty as you're leading in because I've been thinking about this topic all morning before we got into it. Like, it really is wild.
Yeah.
I had a cry on my roof this morning, just as the sun was coming over, and the spring has just knocked me on my ass in this beautiful way, recognizing how we're on the cusp of this beautiful beginning. And all these, we're not even into it, but it's just the emotions have just been at the surface today. And we all know I just let them fly at this point. But even just hearing you lead in, it's so fucking true. I will let you continue, but I was staring at you bubbling.
I'm glad you bubbled over, but what Chrissy's expressing right now, in not only her words, obviously, but just the emoting of the gravity of it, it's hard to put into words. It's hard. And Chrissy and I love words. We're expressive humans. And it is really, really tough to put into words of how transformational these relationships have been, not only individually, but collectively. Both of us, I think it's fair to say, to speak for Chrissy in this as well, is I liked who I was before. I love who I am. And I thought I loved who I was. And I hadn't even, it was like putting my growth on steroids by being with these people. And because of that, and this is a sentiment that has been shared by numerous people within our group. You know, we've come together so many times and, you know, like we just start a cappella singing, like Lean on Me at random times. Like and it's not this like cheesy moment. It's like this overwhelming, overcoming moment where we just feel compelled to, and everyone just like, it just speaks to everyone to just have these really magical moments. And I think it's not even the moments, it's how we got to this conversation of why we felt that we wanted to share in an episode was Chrissy and I were hanging out the other day, and I shared a moment that I had in the forest. I actually grabbed my phone at one point and was like recording myself because I was trying to encapsulate the moment as it was happening. But I was walking in the forest, and it wasn't even so much I was thinking about our community, our group, our crew, as much as it almost came like a bit of a vision of in front of my mind's eye of, I was thinking, and it came to me of like, it really is extraordinary how, like you said, all walks of life. And, you know, there's like, it's been kind of this living, working document, and if you will, of a few coming in and out here and there, that, you know, there's still the bond there, but not as active, if you will. But there's approximately like 8 to 12 of us. And every single one is this like powerhouse of a human, like exceptionally creative and independent. And they take these big chances and they love what they do. And they're incredible at what they do. And I'm not saying that's like a prerequisite to be a magical. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, and everybody's these pretty intense personalities, which is also very rare to have in a group. And so we brought all of this together, weaved this tapestry together. We also were like, how do we make this last a lifetime just as it is? And we also felt like if we could come together and have this magical thing, and I still think that there is a world in which that could be, but we wanted to be like, how do we buy land and how do we all buy houses and live and stuff? And again, maybe, but I had this moment in the forest because up until then, I'd really been projecting my thoughts and feelings towards how do we make this last forever, as close and preserved as possible, because what a magical way to live if so. And the mind's eye moment that came was like, it was almost like this beautiful energetic orb, if you will. And we were the orb, and everybody was there just growing. And like Chrissy said, the things that we've gone through individually and supported one another through is just wild. Like not
every
like most
single one of us.
And I look at like other friends and it's not like, and they could be like, wow, are you guys pulling this in? And you're like, no, because like, we haven't made that like, wah, 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 our story. It's like that. Where are we going to go from here? How are we going to use this to like, you know, better ourselves as humans?
All of us got handed a challenge that was going to be our elevator in life if we chose to do it. And I don't know if we would have been able to hit the up button without each other.
Correct.
Or maybe not as like readily or as supported.
Yeah, absolutely. There would have been probably a lot more self-sabotage mixed in there, and what you've said is a really important thing. And I'm going to bring that point in a little bit later of like around why secure attachment is so important and why I think we really offered one another that, because that's when you can start to move into the safety of creativity, exploration, and imagination in hardship, is when you have a soft, safe place and a base where most people don't. So the struggle's much harder to get through those moments. Maybe I've already just said it, but I'll say it deeper.
I'll elaborate later.
So this kind of like energetic orb of, I was like, what if we weren't necessarily meant to come in and have this magical experience that we were supposed to carry throughout time in that form, but that we were always meant to come in and have, and what the mind's eye came in was like us all having this like energetic, you know, therapeutic, incredibly learning phase that everybody brought their strengths and everybody showed up in their weaknesses, and everybody was honest enough to be calling each other on that shit and being like, hey, like, come on. And the person's like, uncomfortable, but okay. And then us to be in a space and place, which is what I feel like is the whisperings that you're speaking to right now, is where then everybody starts to step into a little bit more individualized explorations of their lives. We're still this unit. We still come back together, but the frequency of which it takes place and the consistency will look differently as people are moving, as people are stepping into new chapters. But what if that was always the point? What if that was it, of us meant to find each other, meant to be together, and to only then take all those gifts, take all those learnings, take all of that, and go off and do those next chapters of creating that much more meaning and that much more ripple effects from that magical space and place, and move into that. Because if we don't, and we hang on when the rumblings are saying it's time for that next, you actually end up doing a disservice. And actually, oftentimes when we do this as people, and I'm going to pause right after this and let you really pop in, Chrissy, is that we can actually poison the waters. We can sour the waters. We can actually work against ourselves and now kind of start to erode the exact magic that we created within ourselves as individuals and the essence that we have as a community. And that doesn't mean, well, it's gotten hard, time to pull the parachute. But it's a difference of like listening to parts of ourselves that are speaking to, it's time to follow these breadcrumbs. And you're like, well, no, because those breadcrumbs don't involve 100% my crew. And it's like, I know. And you're like, but no. And it's like, but yeah, So that's why this is really coming. So I shared that with Chrissy, and, she was like, that deeply resonates with me. And this is, and now here we are talking out loud. And I just want to caveat this. And if our gals are listening right now, because we've never actually talked out loud like this to our girlfriends, and if they're like, what the fuck, dudes? Are you breaking up with this online? That is not what this is about. And that is not what's happening. I think at the end of the day, if anyone is feeling a bit like, wait, what? I think they've heard the same whisperings. Mm-hmm. And that's not what this is. This isn't a breakup episode. It's far, far from it.
You can't break apart energy like that. Energy, though, is malleable and transformative. And I think that's really what you and I recognize. Even just for myself, I'm grappling with this whole new version of myself that I'm just meeting almost daily at this point. It's evolving so much in real time. And it's fascinating because I've had this group that's cracked me open completely, which is apparently why I can't stop crying. This is ridiculous. But I thought about this so much, like it was this most beautiful becoming. And it is hard to verbalize into words what we've all shared so far. But the point was always to grow. And like, friends that shape you, the shape evolves and changes as well. And so to your point, it's not a matter of saying like, this is the end of a chapter. It is the evolution and the beginning of something so new and so beautiful. Because I think of like the powerhouses that we have in our sphere and how I've seen each and every one of these individuals grow because of that willing to show up so vulnerable, and maybe not in the beginning, like having that chipped away and come forward. We're about to see these people we care so deeply about do some of their greatest work. And we get to still be a part of that. But to your point, nostalgia is a hell of a drug. Nostalgia is a hell of a drug. It's a beautiful feeling. It's cozy. It's safe. But if you try and hold on to the recreation of these moments and try and replicate them over and over again, to your point, in yourself it feels disjointed because it's not possible to do that. It's not possible to do that, especially because it's actually not the same versions of ourselves coming to the table. And there's a grieving when you come to that point and realize it. I can use such a simplistic example that takes the emotion almost out of it for a second, but one moto show in Portland, there was an epic year go down. I actually wasn't out there this year, but the initial stripperoke. So this is karaoke with strippers. And there was so much talk around making this happen. And the next year we go out, we stumble upon a tiki bar that has karaoke, and the most insanely, organically fun energy in the
Epic
room
night. It was epic. The Americans were singing "Oh Canada." They loved us so much.
We were applauded out of the
yes.
destination. But we basically put a cap on that night to go and recreate the stripperoke experience, which ultimately couldn't be replicated in its form that had unfolded the previous year. It actually was the slight downer to the evening, so to speak. And that's just such a ridiculous but high level example of when you try and replicate and hold on to a feeling and that sense of sameness. Because even if you try your hardest, it's never going to fit the same because it's a different version that's unfolding and it's supposed to be like that. But it's interesting because as I feel like such a different person, and I'm feeling those callings of expansion in ways that probably aren't going to make sense to so many based on where the chess pieces go. And I don't even know where the chess pieces are all going to go. I'm quite literally just following my star north, and wherever it's knocking me, I'm going, and I'm not asking questions because I've learned to just let go and trust. But you're making these reckonings of not being the same within yourself. And then how does that fit in the collective? And why do certain things feel different? And it does create a grieving process. And it's not because you're saying goodbye to anything or anyone. That's the other part. It's not like what we have is going anywhere.
No.
But it's also, I think, in this changeable form right now that truthfully has the biggest power. This is going to sound like a bold and grandeur statement, but if you believe we're all connected, you're not going to think I'm nuts. It's kind of like this ball of energy came together and almost like it started to hum and buzz at this crazy, furious frequency. I almost think of it like the solar energy of the sun. And now we're just those pieces of plasma, like going into the atmosphere in our own directions with so much power. And it was always meant to be this way. I know it. But you can feel those subtle shifts are hard to accept. It's easy to build resistance around that. And then all of a sudden you're getting frustrated if it doesn't all feel the same, but it's not supposed to all feel the same. And how do you reckon that in your heart when you've had such a beautiful experience that it's impossible to recreate it? You wouldn't want to.
And there's so much to also, whenever you're making those, like, or when anyone starts to feel those rumblings of like pulling yourself in a different direction, that not only is difficult to sometimes reconcile because you're like, I want this to stay similar or the same, or how do I hold on to this? Or how do I, is that it's not just affecting you, it affects the whole community, right? When one of us makes any adjustments, small, large, in all those different ways. And so, like you said, there's a certain amount that you have to just trust that, not that anybody that feels a bit, if they don't like it or they feel a bit negative about it or whatever it is, I think it's also having that open dialogue and those open conversations about it. Because guess what, the thing that pops up into my head and where I go to like that secure attachment aspect is that when we don't have information and there's changes that happen within our relationships, especially people that we're close to, we fill in the blanks. And the fill in the blanks and the story that we tell ourselves often comes from places where someone abandoned us or there was neglect, which one way or the other, one layer or another, we all have it. And when we have more conversations about what we're experiencing or what is the pull factor, it allows that person to safely make sense of what's happening. It doesn't mean that they probably won't be still sad, or your friends or your family or whoever it is, or that they might still not like it, but at least it allows them a framework into better, not turning it into like, did I do something? Is there like, that's why too, as we're going through these experiences of just that, of like having these kinds of conversations, because it allows allows people to process in really healthy ways, because there is healthy detachment, and that is a really healthy thing. What happens when it becomes unhealthy is when it's like avoidance, or, you're running away, or then you're like, I get that. But if you don't share, then we fill in the blanks, or I fill in the blanks, or whoever and whatever. But sometimes too, if there's not the healthy conversations around it, that's where it can feel where it's like, well, I feel like the change is coming from that person or this person or that. And
it's like creating a threat that doesn't actually exist.
Yes.
It's not threatening. It's
yes.
a calling.
And you're like, there's a rumble of truth to what you're saying, or there's a sprinkle of truth, but the level at which you're expressing that to be the truth is a pretty big stretch, but the feeling's so real. And that's the only evidence, because we don't really learn too much about healthy detachment. Like even when you think of like the first experiences, again, I'm always going to go back to childhood, but like, it's those things of like, if you went for your first day and your parent was like bawling, crying as they dropped you off, and they were like, how am I going to die? And you were just like, oh God, are you sure this is safe? I'm going here. Or there's so many ways and places where you have like you're experiencing it, or someone around you has, like the first time you leave the house, like I remember feeling heartbroken and excited all at the same time when I left my home for the first time to go move out on my own, and the heartbreak and excitement my parents had for me. And, there's certain people that didn't get a healthy goodbye. They got to be like, well, I don't know why you got to go so soon. Or you
could be my mom that said, you made me feel just as bad as the day your dad died. That was lovely.
Yeah. Unhealthy detachment example. You just gave perfectly. Little head. Yeah. Not deserved.
I was like, okay, well.
You're like, so I'll see you at Thanksgiving. Go from here. Yeah. Like, it is what you said. It's such a massive part of being a human, is being in always a state of transition. And sometimes you're in a smaller, slower, period of that transition. And then sometimes you're on a rapid rocket ship trajectory of transition, but you were always in a state of transition. Like we said, just even being in our group, how much we changed, how much we were in transition. But when you feel also such a safe little nest, that's also hard to transition out of, because it's like, well, that's a really safe space that I get to just pop over anytime I want, one or the other. Like if I need, doesn't matter what time of the night, there is at least one of you that I can call, and that even if the other sleeps through the ring, one won't, and pick up.
Well, and I think being child-free women as well exacerbates that feeling.
A few of us, not all, but a few of us. Yes. Yeah. We're not calling Nikki and Haley at 2 a.m. and being like, girl, she gonna be like, you fucking kidding me? You call one of the childless motherfuckers on this one. Like, I'll see you in the broad daylight when my kid's at.
I guess I hear that, but I'm saying as well that maybe I'm not verbalizing it right, but most of us in the group don't necessarily have, like, we do have families or things like that, but we are so independent in this space and in this geography and all the rest of it. Yeah. So like holding on to that safety nest as well, or finding it in the first place, I think was just exponentially more powerful, because without that, you could feel like you're just traversing in the abyss, but we all are kind of traversing in the abyss of this universe and figuring it out, and then simultaneously recognizing you're connected to everything but connected to nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's also one of the really important things of like a healthy, transition through life, is that you have groups and communities, and you're still threaded within that tapestry. But then it is a really important thing to have spaces in time where you really step out onto your own. It can be small, it can be big, doesn't have to be a long length of time, but at times it absolutely calls for you to become more individualized. Like my year was much more individualized, this last one, because I had to, it called for that. Now I'm able to definitely go back into the much more socialized aspect. But I was very much reminded this last year how much I thrive off of being alone. And so that's still going to be a really big part of my life, is creating big chunks in my week where I am by myself, somewhere where people are not around me, because that's a part of my thriving. It's alone time, but it is a really important part of our inner workings as a human, is that we're not always bouncing off the relational experiences. But also what's just so really cool is like being in relationship with others, especially in a healthy dynamic, it develops parts of yourself that is actually impossible to do completely on your own. Like I remember that one we were passing around that it was some sort of Instagram, someone speaking or whatever, or a reel or something or other. But it was about how one of the most difficult things when a friend dies within your friend group is that your other friends, there's a part of them that also dies with them. Not in the sense of missing, not in the sense of having that hole, but each person brings out a part of their personality that only that person can bring out. And when that person's no longer there, they also aren't there to bring that part of that friend's personality out. So you also lose a piece of each one of your friends because that goes with that friend.
No, for
and
sure.
So it's such a cool thing to have, or not cool, but important, where you think of like what brings out alone, what brings out with, but that it can't always just be one.
Well, not even just what it brings out in you, but also what it heals. Like,
Yeah.
to your point of work that you can do yourself and then work that happens through others, self-work, we know that's something you and I have a prescription on for life.
Yeah.
But there's certain parts of yourself you actually heal through relationship and relationships with others. And I think that's probably been a profound thread for each and every single one of us in this circle for our own individual ways. And then it's interesting even seeing how it's showing up in, my first love relationship outside of my marriage. Like, I look at this group of women that really cultivated that secure attachment for the first time in my life, learning to trust it, allowing the layers to unfold, cracking open, giving myself permission to be seen and not shy away from that. I didn't have that. There was never a safe place to unravel in that way. And then now to be in a position to learn how to receive, being a hyper independent individual and learning how to receive, it comes up in so many different ways in my relationship as a barrier because I'm learning it in real time and healing parts of myself in real time. But I spent so much time inward. I have a lot of recognition as it's happening in the moment, which gives you space and awareness too, just when it comes to certain emotions, feelings, as you're working through shit like that you don't all of a sudden start spewing and projecting or self-sabotaging yourself in the process. And that was all learned through these last 5 or 6 years. I want to also say, because it sounds like we're being like, the friendship is dead.
Yeah, it's not at all. Like, we're still together all the time. We have plans all summer long together. So by all means, it's not like we're like, well, it's been nice. Like, no,
It's been a good run.
We're going to spend maybe 25% less time than we have already, but that can feel profound when you're used to a different way of being.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what, as I say, I don't know. If there's one thing I've learned, I don't know what's coming down the pipe on any given day at any given time. What a hilarious concept that I thought for a brief moment I did. That being said, what an idiot.
Yeah.
But that deep knowing of, I just feel it in my gut that there is just huge transformation ahead. And just working really hard to not resist that, but also understanding there are perceived costs to any evolution and change. But it's not, it's an investment, if that makes sense. Like, it feels like a cost, but it's actually an investment, like allowing yourself to not get so strapped on to the sameness and keeping things as they are.
Mhm.
It's like anything in life. I think one of our first or early episodes was all about change and embracing change. And to your point, we were always changing and malleable. And to be honest, I feel like we're going to have some of our best memories yet as a collective
I do as
because of the
well.
elements we're going to be celebrating with each other and seeing and meeting these different versions of ourselves in this lifetime. Because at the end of the day, one thing I do know, and I know this to be true because you and I talked about this just the other day as this came up, Lori. We've bounced around to different places. We have relationships with people from the decades and the history
Mhm.
of our lives, and we know what it takes to hold on to those. And we also understand, I think, the importance of maintaining those. Not to the point, like some relationships are a reason, a season, and not meant to be forever. I've had a million acquaintances in my life,
Yes, yes.
but there is no way what has happened here becomes so surface that they disappear from my heart. You know, it's
There,
like a heart
there's
space is
not a
always
world
going
in
to have a
which, yeah,
container, you know?
yeah, there's not a world in which these are lifelong family members. I definitely consider this community more of a family than even my friends at this point in time. And so it's almost like growing up with your brothers and sisters, just us as sisters. And is moving out of the house, some of us, and some of us are still in the house, and some might go, and some might always live in and around the block. You know what I mean? But it's like you're still family. But it is your responsibility as you transition out of these things, or not out, sorry, as you evolve, as you transition and evolve, is that you have to put effort in still. You just might look a little different, but you have to still put the effort in. It's not just going to magically hold the magic, but it is a possibility.
I think it's that, like, absolutely putting the effort and also having deep recognition for each other that we're all evolving. And so providing space for those new
Yes.
versions.
Yes.
Because growth can sometimes feel threatening or trigger if it's happening in different times or speeds amongst each other. And if that's ever a feeling, getting so curious over what that is pinging inside, because it may just be a calling unto yourself to get more exploratory as to why that feels. It's often not like, if it's coming from a positive rooted space, it's often not designed to be a threat against you, but it can feel or be perceived that way at first.
Touching a
Which can be a
wound.
detriment. Yes, exactly.
Touching a wound.
Which
And
could
it's
be
usually,
such a detriment to something beautiful on the other side versus wanting to push
yes.
that version away. You need to give space to get acquainted.
Yeah. And honestly, man, those are opportunities. Like one of my little friendship circles from like high school touched one of my wounds like a couple weeks ago. And then it like sprung through my body. And on paper, my friend was being an asshole. It's her wound that's showing up. She does ghosting shit and she's trying to bypass it by being like, never happened, moving on. But I also am like, this is hitting a wound. Yes, it's frustrating, but the level of which I'm feeling this. And so I've been journaling. And as soon as I started journaling about it, that feeling started to go down. But it also allows me the space to heal that wound for myself. The point of it is that you can look at that person and go, there's all this evidence of why they love me and they're good people and they're all these things. So if that's making me feel this way in this moment, yes, the feeling in the moment is fair. I feel disappointed. I feel sad that they're going and they're doing these things and they're not there the same way that they used to be and all those things. But I understand the context and I understand the actual, like, where they're headed is a beautiful thing. And I'm very happy for them. Those things can both be true and those feelings should both be true. Not like, oh my God, I'm just only so happy. I said this to our friend the other day. Remember, I said, I'm so happy for the move, but as a friend, I'm super bummed out because I don't get to see you in the same way. Both are true and both deserve. And I said, like, this is part of me, but this is the part of me that's like, I'm bummed. I'm sad. Like, and
100%.
but when you go to that place of you take that and you all of a sudden that narrative can, builds and builds. And suddenly that they're a bad guy in your eye or bad gal. That's where you go, that's not that.
There's evidence to support it when you strip it down.
And when you've got good people, it allows you all that evidence to then say, this is a lot more of my own wounds, man, that are like opened up in this moment. And that's a favor to you because that allows you also the safe space to then go to even to that friend of like, oof, this opened up in me. Like this came out in me. And that's something that kind of great, as uncomfortable as it is. I get to repair that. And so that's not open to the world anymore because it never was meant to be. So there's also so much opportunity, even in the discomfort, even in the grief, because you get to do those in a healthy way at these different stages in your life with these healthy relationships. That's transformative. Like that in itself is transformative.
So I think we got to sing.
We got to do it fast because you got an appointment. Motivation
maintenance. Okay. We're doing this. Actually, not you and I, but you and I in our group. I think it should be a group activity, and I think it could be a beautiful thing because there are those whispers, rumblings, and I think that this winter season was so inward for so many of us, processing working through different phases of life. But doing a then, now, and next hangout. So a nostalgia night for what's becoming. So basically, sitting and sharing together, much like we did at the end of the Belize trip, all of us went on this magical, could not recreate the moment, although we are going to try in Vietnam, make new memories. I'm definitely down for that trip.
Yeah.
2026. No way that's not
It'll be
happening.
Epic.
But basically a core memory that shaped you. So not even your favorite memory, but like a memory that was transformative for you, a transformative moment, and going around and sharing the beauty of that nostalgia and what that did. And then asking the group, who are you becoming now?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you in this state of transition? What's something new that you're craving? What's calling? What's whispering towards you? Because there could be a possibility, like you and I, Lori, pay attention to this shit, but we may have friends with nudges that haven't been able to sit with breath and look and question that. And then the big one, because we aren't going anywhere from each other. It may look different, but we are not going anywhere from each other. Is what dream or direction are you stepping into, and how can this group best support the growth that's yet to come?
I absolutely think this is an incredible exercise to do as a group, and we are 100% doing this. Bing bong. We're going to absolutely do this.
Because I think that's the beauty, is like maybe the type of support each of us needs in this moment might look different than what we as individuals might assume the other person needs. And I think to neglect the power of this collective in the time that I think it matters most to fuel these evolutions and see these sparks explode into fucking fireworks in this world, it's important to ask the questions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mine was, this is more of an individualized practice and exercise, but whatever transition that you're in your life, and whether it's friendships, whether it's family, whatever it is where you feel that rumbling of a time, a beautiful time that's transitioning and evolving into something different, is writing down of like the core pieces to what it is that really meant something to you. Like is it the honesty that you had? Is it the support that you had? Is it the laughter and the joy it brought you? Write all the core parts of those relationships or those dynamics or that time that really means something to you. Because a lot of times we think it's the experience. It was that trip. It was that thing, but it's not the thing. It's what it brings out of you, the undercurrent. And so taking those pieces and then asking yourself in the evolution as is, and you'll probably do it along the way, how can I not recreate the experience, but how can I create that within the dynamic that's there now. What does that look like? How does that look like in action? How does that look like in how you speak with them? How does that look like in the presence that you bring? How does that look like in your attitude? Whatever it is, but really kind of break it down into like, what are your core kind of values, or what are your core things that really speak to you about those relationships, dynamics, times in your life, because that's what actually means something to you. And there's a million modalities or a million experiences or a million ways to express that. And you'll do that through the evolution of not only you as an individual, but then you within the collective. And that's how you carry it through, that's one of the big ways you can carry it through into that future, so that you can continue magic just in a different way.
I love that we call it magic. Well, for my quote, and again, I preface this by saying we're just at the precipice of a new beginning. This isn't an ending. I just think all our stories are being written in these beautiful directions, but we have shared this insane moment in time. So in the words of Dr. Seuss, don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened.
Mm-hmm. This is the unknown, or someone that's unknown. The beauty of genuine connection is not in its permanence, but in how it forever alters the landscape of who we are.
Well, that one's way better. Way to go, unknown.
Way to go, whoever you are. I should have said it's my personal quote.
Totally. Anyways, I love
you
this.
have to go. So hold on. That is your motivation.
Good call. Yeah, I've just been bubbling in all of this, but I love it. I love you. We're
love
not
you.
going anywhere. You can like frolic into the world, but you're stuck with me for life. That is all.
Yeah, you and I are travelers. We'll find each other no matter what. We're not worried.
Yep. You've just listened to the Motivation Podcast with your host, Chrissy Van, and me, Laura Joy Kingwell.
Thanks for joining us along the ride. We've got new episodes dropping every Monday, and we're all about community. So follow us on Instagram at Motivation Podcast and visit our website at themotivation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and full throttle.